One of the things that really helped all the kids and helped the crew was the fact that I pretty much shot the film in continuity. So the kids knew emotionally where they had been the day before, and they pretty much didn't have any idea where they were going the next day. So like real life, every day was a surprise. And until finally, when E.T. began to die, Drew, Henry Thomas, and Robert really believed that this was happening to their lives. And I think their acting couldn't even be called acting at that point. It was just reacting. It was reacting to their best friend in the universe who was going away and leaving them.
Mom.
Movies are so sad, especially this one.
I was so upset because I thought he was a person, but I know he wasn't. Someone who was so kind and loving being hurt. And I know the people were trying to save him, but it didn't matter. I just thought everything in the world was hurting this person, and it was destroying me inside. I couldn't stand seeing pain brought to someone who brought so much pleasure with them.
She did, Mama.
You think so, sweetheart?
We just want to come back.
It just really hurt my heart and made me very sad and tapped into emotions that I obviously had pretty close to the surface of, you know, not wanting a very perfect thing to be imperfect.
I don't know how to feel anymore.
Right, exactly. That's a good line.
Except
You can't, yeah, that's great. I definitely want that line this time. That's very, very good.
In the case where your co-star is inanimate and made of plastic, obviously he's not going to be giving you a lot off screen. So Stephen would quite often talk me through the scene and tell me what was happening off screen that I was reacting to.
Look at the heart light. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home. Does this mean? Yeah.
Does this mean they're coming?
Yes.
And so when I saw the film for the first time, I was convinced that I was hearing Stephen's voice over and over and over again. But of course it wasn't there. But I imagined that it was.
The last thing we shot with the kids was the goodbye at the spaceship at the very end inside our forest set. All the kids just were trying to hold it together. And if I did 3 or 4 or 5 takes, the kids fell apart on each take because they knew that they weren't going to see E.T. again. You'll walk all the way from here, right over to E.T., and you'll take your position in front of him. And the first thing he says is, he says, stay. He says, come. He puts his hands up and he says, come. And you don't have to say, no, I can't. You don't have to verbalize it. Just shake your head and make E.T. know that you can't go with him. He lowers his head real sadly, and he touches his heart, and he says, ouch. I think I went to Henry and I just whispered in his ear, this is it. This is the last moment between the two of you. And at that point, Henry just knew exactly what his heart broke open. And he held it back, and when I said action, it just all came flooding forth. I want to know that you're my my friend, as long as I live, as long as you live, there's going to be a connection between us, Elliot, a connection. Come.
Come. Stay.
Ouch. Right to the lips. To the lips. Ouch.
Ouch. Ouch.
The whole movie, all in, was $10 million. And it was actually bonded by a bonding company. Universal released it, but they didn't even put all the money up for it. They had a bonding company to guarantee the completion. They wanted to make the picture, but they thought it would lose a lot of money because it was a kids' movie, and kids' movies were not doing well at all. And I understand their hesitation. No kid movie had broken through any kind of a ceiling for years. So I was absolutely happily in shock when it began to roll out the way it did. Cut! Great. Beauty. Beautiful.
It's working! It's working!
It was for everybody. The adults liked it as much as the children. The adults shared it with their children. This is a communal experience movie. That's why it was so successful, is because you shared it with everybody around you. And for 2 hours, you were friends.
The interesting thing for me personally about E.T. is I didn't have any real experience. It's the first movie that I had ever produced on my own. I always look back at that being kind of numbing after a while. I remember Lou Wasserman used to call me every day. I was, just turned 30 years old. It's the first movie I've ever produced, and I've got Lou calling me every day saying, okay, now, do you know what it's done in this territory, and this territory? And I would listen and respectfully, agree and say, gee, that's really exciting, and not really knowing what these numbers were in comparison to. And then finally, about 2 weeks into these constant phone calls, he said to me, Kathy, do you have any idea what this means? And I said, no, actually I don't.
It was scary, it was exciting, it was definitely a new experience, and one that I had not foreseen happening.
He is the cutest alien I have ever met and seen.
I was 7 years old and I had never been outside of California, and the world already seemed so big to me. But all of a sudden, my whole perspective changed, and the world was so big. But it seemed like everyone still had this great connection on that they wanted to feel good and experience something heartfelt and profound together. It was really cool to see the movies being dubbed in all these different languages, to see myself speaking French and Japanese and German, and how neat that was. And I think that E.T. really taught me that there are no boundaries in friendship. And it made me such an open person. I mean, so much of who I am now is because of that.
I went to England. They had the royal premiere. Prince Charles and Princess Diana were there.
Fake.
I remember Drew gave Princess Diana a stuffed E.T. doll, and it was really, really cute. And then afterwards, after the movie was over, but while the final credits were rolling, they hustled us out of the movie theater, and we had a sort of a secret meeting with Princess Diana and Prince Charles, because she had to leave the theater to fix her makeup because she was crying. So we got to meet them again informally, which was just overwhelming. I mean,
In this quiet neighborhood, on this tranquil street, a mystery is unfolding. And an adventure is beginning. Again.
I'm keeping him.
E.T. is a movie that I probably get questioned about the most from young kids who always ask me, when are you going to make a sequel to E.T.? And I always say, I'm not, unfortunately. I'm sorry, I'm not going to. It's a little gem the way it was, and any future iteration of E.T. would only distill the memory of the first one.
With enhanced visual effects.
But I thought, oh my God, wouldn't it be great to reissue it? And what better occasion than the 20th anniversary to bring it back out again with a couple of enhancements to sort of, please the perfectionist inside myself.
Steven didn't want any changes to be made that would call attention to the change. He wanted the changes to really assimilate into what people remember about this movie. The whole reason to reissue this movie is to allow people to re-experience E.T. and to allow a new generation to experience E.T. We're not reissuing the movie because we decided there was something wrong that we wanted to fix. And that was extremely important to Steven, and that's why, just like he would, when he made the movie, follow through on every single aspect of a shot, he did the same thing with all the shots that were altered in any way in this reissue.
E.T. phone home. And they'll come.
E.T. is really the same picture. It's been enhanced by the current technology, which I would have used had I had that technology in 1981. There were certain shots that always made me feel that if I only had another couple of hours that day, Carlo Rambaldi's magicians, the geniuses that really created and controlled E.T. during the shoot, could have perfected some of the emotions that I always wanted. And the whole digital technology allowed me to take my pet peeve shots and correct them digitally. I always thought, gee, I'd like to be able to, to fix the sky, and fix the actual E.T. ship. Just enhance it somewhat, make it a little more interesting. I'd always wanted to get rid of E.T.'s run at the beginning of the film when Keyes is chasing him, because E.T. was simply a light on a rail. Now you see E.T. actually running fast, and you realize, oh, these things can run.
Our challenge, how would E.T. run? You never see him run in the film. He kind of shuffles. He's got these little teeny feet, shuffles along. And we started to analyze how his body is constructed, and I think the creature that his body most resembles is a gorilla, because he's got these very, very long arms and these very short legs. We developed a run that was very gorilla-like, where he actually uses his front legs to help him move along.
I never had any really full body shots except when E.T. is on the floor and looking a bit like a Dunkin' Donut. He's all glazed with white and he's dying, and E.T. puts his hands out. That was a wonderful shot. It was the first time that we had really used Carlo Rambaldi's arms and finger movement attached to the actual torso. And that was very exciting. But there was no real movement, full movement of E.T. except when we had the little people and our young boy without legs inside the E.T. costume, especially for the scene inside the kitchen where he gets hit by the refrigerator, hits the wall, and falls over drunk.
There's who? Man from the movie, but I think you killed him already.
But there was never really a scene of E.T. running. So that was at the beginning of the picture when he's running away from Keyes and his men. That was the perfect time to have E.T. running past the camera, pulling up to a stop, and watching his ship, leaving him behind.
At first, E.T. was supposed to do too many things. He was supposed to reach up towards the ship and then stop and then turn back towards the camera and look sad. And we decided that was all too much. Time and time again, we've always found less is more. And that shot simply was a wonderful acting challenge because we had to act it from behind. E.T. had to run up to the ship, stop, and just from his breathing and the sinking of his head, we were able to tell the audience he's sad, he's dejected, he can't go home now.
Oh, God!
That was a challenging shot because we had to redo what I always thought was a classic shot. And I remember trying to pull direction out of Steven and saying, what is E.T. thinking? Is he embarrassed Is he angry? Is he having fun with this?
He's embarrassed, and we wanted to not just do a generic embarrassed expression, but try to think about what do we do when we're embarrassed, and how do our eyes move, and what are we thinking about, and what does it mean when our eyes move certain ways. And we filmed a lot of reference of ourselves and our friends acting out the scenes, and we try to really get down into the little finite details of that type of stuff. But
that's great. Oh man, that's just beautiful acting.
Great.
It was kind of like giving E.T. cosmetic surgery. In order to give him more expression, there had to be more digital movement in the face. Therefore, ILM had to create more muscles that were never in evidence when we made the picture with the limitations of the technology, of the state-of-the-art.
One of my personal goals on the project was to make sure that the effects are the way that people remember them, for them not to stand out, that it just flow and have the charm that the original did, and I think we succeeded.
Are they gone, Mama? What are you waiting for? Let's go!
The climate for guns was not as inflammatory in 1982 as it is today.
All she has to do is see one gun. If a few guys are just behind her, still bring your guns out.
But I was very, very sensitive to the fact that there were guns in E.T.
No guns as children!
I had put the guns in E.T. I wanted there to be an adult threat against the kids.
We made it!
But just having the guys with the guns anywhere around the kids always bothered me. And it bothered me more after my son was born, Max, in 1985. It didn't bother me as much when I made the picture, but 3 years later, when I suddenly was a parent for the first time, I took the world more seriously after having a child than I ever took the world before having had a child. It just changed my life. It was just the biggest catharsis of my life. And I felt that the guns were probably an inappropriate thing to do, and those guys could have easily been with walkie-talkies. So I thought this was an opportunity to take out the guns. There are a couple scenes that are back in the picture now that I really was on the fence about in 1982 when I cut the picture together, so I'm happy about that.
You were outside last night waiting for that thing to come back, weren't you?
There was always a longer day that Elliot had homesick when he faked his sickness by putting a thermometer against the light bulb, which, by the way, I had done to my mother when I was a kid growing up, and even though she always caught me, she still let me stay home from school. Because I'd be cutting my little 8mm movies, which is why I would always put the thermometer to the light bulb. My mom just needed a technical reason to say, okay, you can stay home and cut. And that was my technical reason. I think that scene, that whole day, was supposed to feel like E.T. at home with his new best friend.
Elliot.
And it's a very short day without that scene. But with the inclusion of that scene, there is a little more bonding opportunities for E.T. and Elliot to get to know each other.
35 pounds? But you're so fat.
Also, I like the moment where Elliot tries to, all kids do, they kind of say, am I taller than my friend, or is my friend taller than me? And then E.T. for the first time exposes and displays his very vulnerable and very, very elongated neck. I thought that was a nice reveal for the neck. In the 1982 movie, E.T. reveals his neck in front of Gertie and Michael and Elliot in the closet. And that was a show of trust. E.T. trusted these children with his life, therefore he could expose the most vulnerable part about him, his neck. But I thought it was more personal, because this is really Elliot's story, more than even Gertie and Michael's, that E.T. would expose that to show Elliot that he's beginning to trust him by showing the vulnerability of his elongated neck.
They had a special rubber puppet made of E.T. that was submersible in a tub filled with water. Given when that puppet was made 20 years ago, it was very limited in terms of its actions.
When we shot the scene in 1981, there's the moment that comes that Elliot pulls E.T. up out of the water. And what happened in reality with that poor E.T. was that about 50 holes in his head spouted water in all directions. But that was the end of that scene because it had not worked.
That definitely had its own set of challenges, one of which was not only did we have to produce a computer graphic, real-looking E.T., we also had to now make it seem as though he was submersed in water.
The Halloween scene was a scene I loved, but I didn't think it really, add to the story because I was trying to cut the time of the picture down. But it was a flavor that I kind of hated losing, but it still was a flavor that I thought if I ever reissued the picture, I wanted to put that scene back in because I think it's one of the best moments Drew Barrymore has. When Drew kind of, looks at her mom and she says, "Anyway, why would he go out in the forest?" I mean, just her delivery was a once-in-a-lifetime moment.
Why would Elliot go to the forest? Why would he do such a thing?
How could I resist not putting that in? There were other scenes I resisted adding back. There was a scene where Harrison Ford played the principal. Now, you never saw Harrison's face, but you saw his body, you saw his hands, and you heard his voice.
I see you fine young people from good homes, every advantage.
And Elliot is called into the principal's office after he kisses the girl and releases all the frogs. That was a very sweet scene because it balanced E.T. trying to take all of the kind of speak and spell and all the different electronic parts to build his communicator, and he wraps it in a sheet and starts to levitate it up the staircase to the second floor. So as Elliot's in the principal's office being lectured and Harrison's back is to Elliot, Elliot starts to levitate in his chair, and he starts to float over the principal. And it was a very, very sweet scene, but I didn't put it in this reissue for the simple reason that it was remaking E.T. too much, and I didn't want to remake E.T. E.T. really is one of the most perfect films I've ever made. I wasn't interested in remaking it. It's good the way it is. I wanted to just enhance it, and very slightly, to give the audience a reason to see it. And also, if I made the movie today, I would have used the technology. I would have used a combination of mechanical. I would have built an E.T., of course, and I would have also digitized E.T., probably much in the same way I enhanced the re-release. I was very careful not to change the substance of the story, not to change any of the characters or any of what motivates them to arrive together at the end. These are just like taking a very, very fine paintbrush and just putting a little bit of rouge on a pallid face. So I think I really held back on this, and it is the E.T. people will remember.
I don't feel like it was 20 years ago. And it's funny because I hear people say, oh, that just seemed like it was yesterday, and it's such a cliche, but it's like, it feels like so close to yesterday. I mean, Steven looks the same, except now he's got the beard. I mean, it's amazing.
This experience of work was one of the greatest I've ever had in my whole life. It was such an intimate, real, family-like experience, and the chemistry was so real that we did really seem like a family. And then the fact that you not only get to play, but express yourself so much and be creative, and it was just the most perfect experience.
He won't hurt you, Gertie.
I think E.T. is enormously relevant because much like the movies that Steven has done now over the years, beginning in a way with E.T., is that he's exploring themes of tolerance. And I think, in a way, that's fundamentally at the heart of E.T. There's issues of abandonment, which I think, ironically enough, symbolically is the feeling of a lot of people in the world right now. And I think that there are issues of tolerance, which is extremely important in terms of the world continuing to go on in any kind of coexistence. And I think in its own way, that's what the story of E.T. is about, is the knowledge and understanding and ultimate acceptance of E.T.
It's a film about compassion, and I think that that's always a nice message for kids and for adults as well. I think that the film's message kind of carries through for audiences today.
I believe in you all my life, every day.
I never pretended that E.T. would succeed. Had Universal gotten their $10 million back, I would have been vindicated. So I didn't make E.T. with tremendous visions of grandeur. I just wanted to get the movie made. It was very close to my heart. I had to see that picture come to fruition, and everything else was icing on the cake.
He's a man from outer space, and we're taking him to a spaceship.
It's a cliche now to say this movie is for the child in all of us. No, this movie is for the people we are and the people we have been and want to be again. It's, I think, for everybody.
I'll be right here.